to be defensive.
All right, we're back. All right, so you got about 30 seconds.
Okay. So, as I was saying, times are changing. Self-driving cars, e-bikes, and e-scooters may reshape transportation in ways we can barely imagine. And that includes parking. I hope the Commission wouldn't get in the way of the market and its ability to experiment in ways that we can most efficiently build what Oregon City buyers and residents demand. Finally, I just want to applaud the city for this inclusive and participatory process. The code amendments before you were thoughtfully and thoroughly considered. Your expert staff and excellent consultants took city code and made it interesting and relevant, and that's challenging. The eventual recommendation was supported by the majority of those who participated in the various committees, and I have a feeling there were many involved who wished the community could do even more to bring about equitable housing for Oregon City residents. After what I hope is unanimous approval of this package of code amendments, I'd welcome review of system development charges and tax abatement programs that further reduce the cost of developing needed housing. In addition, I'd encourage the city to look for ways to provide further investments in housing through dedicated construction excise taxes, tax increment financing, and your city's support of Measure 26-199, the Regional Affordable Housing Bond that will be on the ballot this November. All these together can truly address the housing crisis facing our communities so that hardworking families are able to afford a safe and stable place to live in Oregon City. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Schmidt and Jennifer Ostrich.
Thank you. Nancy.
And I am going to be very strict about the red light.
You about your project.
Everybody's gone over.
Can I go up? No.
Okay.
I'll get you back in the rotation.
Okay, that'd be cool. Thank you.
I got you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robin Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director of the Father's Heart Street Ministry in Oregon City. I want to thank you for this opportunity and for all that you're doing on behalf of the most vulnerable in our community. I'm impressed with your desire to find and implement solutions for them. In the last 2 years of my directing, I have been seen so much support from the local community, and I've heard countless times of the appreciation for us being available to those in need. The community seems to appreciate a place that they can contribute to the needs of others, not only with their item and financial donations, but many times they bring people in need for services. There just seems to be an underlying compassion that runs through Oregon City and its citizens, and we're glad to be a part of this community. The Father's Heart is a day center for those experiencing homelessness and those on the verge of losing their homes. We have also served for many years as the emergency warming shelter for up to 49 people when the weather is freezing or below. Because of Oregon City granting emergency resolutions, we have been able to offer a safe, caring place for people to receive warm meals and warm place to lay their head. We also help people from filling emergency rooms in the hospitals by preventing them from sickness. You actually could say that we're saving lives. Some people are brought to us by the people in the community that they see someone in distress, also police officers, and sometimes even some are released to us from the hospital because they have no place to go but us. We're grateful for the privilege of serving the community by caring for those in great need during the severe weather. The people served in the emergency shelter many times are also fighting physical health issues, disabilities, mental health on top of dealing with severe weather. They come to us many times with soaked and wet clothes or shoes, and we're able to offer them dry clothes, shoes, hand and feet warmers, a warm meal, and supervised, safe rest. We're also able to refer people to our day center for receiving much of these needed services. Those that come to our day center are not only able to receive meals, but also showers with a clothing exchange, computer access to phone, and use as their mailing address.
Legislative code amendments. Are we getting there?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
We also are weekly, we have many services. I'll just keep going. In the last month alone, we've seen clients advocated for in court, transportation to appointments, and 3 find affordable housing just this last month. And I'll skim on. Day or night, the Father's Heart greatly respects our neighborhood and community at large. We have strict guidelines for appropriate behavior inside as well as outside on our property. Guests that come in for emergency shelter must be able to comply to our guidelines to stay as guests Every night, the guidelines are gone over with all the guests to make sure the peace is maintained for all, and this means being considerate while being outside on our property. There are designated areas for smoking and visiting outside. No one is allowed out after 10 p.m. And I say that because I want people to understand the guidelines that we do have for a night shelter. We take it very seriously. The Father's Heart just wants to encourage you to change the current terminology of emergency resolution to permitted use. In the past, the cold weather comes a little earlier than the passing of the emergency resolution. Last year, I actually opened the shelter at midnight of the day of the resolution being passed. I couldn't live another night telling people as soon as the resolution passes, we can open. So at midnight, I drove over to the transit center and drove nearby streets and told people we were open. The simple fact is that we cannot operate at night without funding, and we couldn't receive funding from the county until the city passed an emergency resolution. Changing the code to permitted use would also allow us necessary time to prepare and schedule volunteers and staffing for the operation of the emergency warming shelter. In previous years, we've had to tell volunteers that we hope to be operating by a certain date, but that is only if the resolution is passed. As you can see, a permitted use would help us greatly for scheduling with confidence the volunteers we want to serve. Father's Heart is only interested in maintaining a well-serving day center and providing an emergency warming shelter in extreme weather, and we're honored to be in Oregon City. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go ahead and call her while you're exiting there. I'm gonna call up somebody else while you're exiting since she wanted to come back up. Thank you.
Also after Jennifer,
Thank you. Thanks.
you know, be fast.
So if I run over, I can just, and you can finish.
Okay, I want to give her up my time if I can,
Jennifer,
because I
go
just
right
gonna
ahead.
share.
Okay. You want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
So when I told people I was
Name,
coming,
just
oh,
name.
excuse me, my name is Jennifer Ostrick. I'm an Oregon City resident. When I told people I was coming here, I was met with two things. Why? They're not going to listen. And tell them exactly what you've seen and heard. Don't sugarcoat it. Well, unfortunately, I'm here because there are children present that I want to show the system can work. I'm also not going to be graphic in my detail because there are children present. This isn't my first time coming before you, but I hope it's my last. And frankly, I don't know what all the advocating, picketing, letter writing, and meeting taking has done. Getting local meetings was met with a mere cold shoulder shrug and aloof response. Getting county, state officials involved was literally useless. I came here before to advocate on behalf of my neighborhood. We were a great little place. Kids laughing, riding their bikes on the streets, families standing on the corners chatting, front yard barbecues. Now our street has lost 7 children. We have 5 rental houses and 1 on the way. Our children aren't allowed to play outside without supervision. This is what you created. Now I don't feel safe walking my dog at dark. I walk along human excrement in our alleys. I have to make sure I look ahead to ensure my children don't see sexual acts in the alleys. Neighbors come home clearly under the influence, blaring music and screaming profanity. Again, I say, this is what you all created. You didn't hear the pleas of my street, but maybe you'll acknowledge that this is not an isolated incident. And if you do not change your codes and take note upon the upcoming proposed changes, this is going to be what Oregon City is known for. It is your job to plan for growth, and each and every one of you should be putting the desires of the community first. We can choose to be a town known for the jail, the courthouse, the homeless, the transitional houses for criminals, sexual offenders, and addicts. Or you can create a city for young professionals, a place where families come, put down roots, and grow. You can cultivate a city known for its unique location, amazing locally owned businesses, and our historical preservation. But it's up to you to make a choice. As much as we'd like to say we can have it all, we simply can't. Families don't want to raise children around felons. Families want to feel safe walking in their neighborhoods. So when I hear a complaint, I ask for 2 possible solutions. Here are solutions. Stop the transitional houses, stop the shelters, stop the ADUs, focus on the very flawed codes that we currently have and make rules so that tax-paying voting citizens are the ones who get to drive the direction of their neighborhoods. Or rewrite the code so that neighborhoods can be involved. Focus on making clear rules that are defined so that we don't have homes filled with felons, addicts, sex offenders with no consequences and no oversight. ADUs need to be clearly defined so that we don't have sheds existing as ADUs. Owners of the properties must be held accountable. There must be a system in place that examines the integrity of the area where there are multi-living dwellings There must be a system in place that examines the integrity of the area where these multi-living dwellings will occur and actually stop the development if negativity impacts the area. The simple, a code is a code, or my hands are tied, is simply unacceptable outcomes. This isn't just my street concern, and if you're naive enough to think this won't impact you, then I can't speak to that. What
The
I,
red light is on.
You're almost done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, keep going.
what I can say is that I run all over this town. My last run, I found 5 hypodermic needles. When I ran around Clackamas Community College, I literally ran around 3 homeless people. I keep hearing we are worried about becoming the next Portland, but Portland has a vibe, and praise all. When you move to Portland, you see a sense of what you're getting into, from food carts to people sleeping in your yard. Oregon City does not. Oregon City is torn into so many parts that what defines us has been lost. Rules aren't made for those who follow them. They are made for those who try to get around them. I don't fear Portland. I fear that we will become the next Gotham City. Now I need to go home, lock my doors, arm my security system, and put my children to bed.
You had about 4 suggestions for code changes, so Carla,
The only thing that I have is,
just say your name again.
Carla Laws from Barclay Hills. I live on Roosevelt Street. And what I wanted to share with you is, I don't know if it's possible, of the activity just in the past few days on my street. I wanted to share a picture. I was going to try to print it out, but my ink cartridge was out. And I don't know if you want to look, but this is just the past few days on my neighborhood in front of my house.
Deal with that, Pete.
You can email
I
them
need
to
to
me
ask
too,
Dan.
and I can
Yeah,
send them
that
to
would
the
be the best thing,
commission.
is to email us those so we can put them in the record.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd be happy to look at them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because this is just a few days, and my son has claimed that he saw where, there's kids present, and looking in at a guy hooking up with people from the transitional house down the road from us, multiple women. My daughter's now going inside because she doesn't want to watch making out in a public street and all sorts of activities of that nature. I have a neighbor who's now stating he's going to move because he directly sees that activity from his yard, and he shuts his blinds and is unable to enjoy his yard. So I will forward this, and so you have it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
All right, we have Paul, Edgar, and Patty
Jennifer,
Webb.
do you want to submit that into the record?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
And can you clarify if either of you are speaking for Friends of Kenema, just for
No, I'm
time
not.
purposes? Okay.
Thank you. Paul Edgar, Oregon City. In front of me, I printed out the, we'll call the Bible, which is Metro's Chapter 3.07. And it's, they call it the, the actual name is the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan. And all cities and codes all must comply to this and be equal to or better than that. I didn't remember that Pete brought that up because it's very important, because within Chapter 3.07, which you all should have, I printed out my copy of it off of the internet. It spells out things like housing choices, and one of the things that get into the framework of what a plan should be, and like voluntary affordable housing production goals. But when I get into these goals and some of the wording here, they have a 5-year voluntary affordable housing production goals. And one of the things that's interesting here is that they're talking about the need for new housing units. This is kind of like almost over and above for households earning less than 30% of the median family income, household income. And they show for Oregon City on this that we need 123 dwelling units over a voluntary 5-year period. And then they show the need for 35 units for Oregon City needed in new housing units in the 30 to 50% of the median income. So when we start talking about this missing middle, oftentimes we're talking about something that's $200,000, $300,000 a unit, and now we have this other area. And that's really the missing unit. That's the one that no one's really talking about, and that's something about what this code needs to be addressing. We need to be able to come in and physically come up with these things. And so they have this also in 3.07 .1220 residential density. Metro shall not require any city or county to authorize an increase in residential density of a single family neighborhood in an area that is mapped solely as a neighborhood. And so we get into this, Tom talked about it, what is the reason for some of this efforts in affordable housing or equitable housing? Some of this need is to address that very low part, which is squeezing people out onto the street. And how do we address them that are on the street? And how do we create something that is affordable? And so within that mindset that I would like to have this passed around, and I do sit on the board of Fort Kennedy, a homeless housing advocacy entity. And what I'm trying to do, this will give you some ideas of even building affordable houses. We need to do clustered communities, planned cluster communities, where we can really get out and create something in gross numbers. And I'm not in favor of all of these ADU modifications and things that destroy the character like Roosevelt Street or any of these others, where in fact what we're doing is we're degrading the quality of life of Oregon City. And I think we have to be very careful about doing that, or even creating shortcuts that absolutely permit this stuff from happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me ask you a quick question. You specifically quoted some sections out of
Metro Functional Plan.
Right. Could you make that section just, I don't know if you need to write it down. I didn't quite get it all.
Well, it's the main part is under chapter title 7 under housing choices, and it's 3.07 .710. 3.07.710.
Okay. 710.
That starts the chapter, and it's part of the whole area. We must be equal to or greater than, and this is the Bible that governs all urban growth and housing in Metro.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Patty?
Good point.
Hi, I'm Patty Webb. I live in Kenema. I'm a little concerned. I saw Mr. Walters show the statewide planning goal number 5, which addresses natural resources. Buyers need to do their due diligence when they purchase property because the NROD is clearly listed. I checked my property before I bought it, so did my realtor. I think it's very, very unfair to the existing homes to allow people to buy into the property and then claim they had no idea there were regulations regarding the NROD, and to allow them to build fences when nobody else has been able to. In my opinion, and I think this is true, that does indeed violate number 5, which you said, Mr. Walters, that none of these would violate any of the comprehensive plan. One of the biggest problems lately in the overlay is that people have been using a lot of the treated lumber, which when I objected to that being used in the NROD next to me, I was told, oh, well, that's an old rule. Well, I've checked with a couple of wood purveyors, Home Depot and places, and they said, indeed, there are chemicals in that wood that will leach out into the environment, into the ground, into the groundwater, and eventually into the river where there's wildlife. And I also think that even though it was meant as a joke, to say that a deer can jump the fence to get to its habitat, that's actually happening, and I think that's really wrong. I've seen the tracks on my neighbor's fence where the wildlife had to climb over. Nobody can see the creek anymore. The wildlife can't go in there. The creek's being poisoned by the wood. Putting a veneer of pine over pressure-treated lumber does not solve the problem. It only hides what you've done. And I find that very insulting, and I think it's a sin to do that, especially when we have rules on the books that we're supposed to follow and they're being ignored. They're being ignored by some people, other people are held to them, and that also is a problem that needs to be addressed. But again, the NROD is clearly labeled, and to say that people want fences around their houses, if that's what they want, then they should build in a place where they are allowed to do that, not move into a place where it's disallowed and then make demands on it and be told by the HRB or planning that, yes, well, go ahead because it's what you want. Well, maybe it's not what the neighbor next door wants that's trying to comply with the law. And I see a lot of that. It's like a virus in a neighborhood. One person is allowed to do it and the whole neighborhood does it. Why shouldn't they? If you make one person comply and the rest of the neighborhood finds out that they've been fined or they've been stopped or they've had to take it down, they will fall in line and follow the code. That's why we have them. So, sorry, that's what I had to say about that.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
Okay.
Yeah, good points, especially pressure treated.
It's got a lot of chemicals in it. It's not good for the environment.
I just lather mine in asphalt and then I don't have to worry about
James McGuire?
Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that.
No,
Oh, okay.
all the way from Milwaukee.
Hi, I'm James McGuire. I'm here to, advocate for the easing of restrictions and requirements on the opening of the warming shelters, specifically the Father's Heart. I was homeless for approximately the last 4 or 5 years in the Oregon City, Milwaukee area. I can say that I used the Father's Heart quite a bit. The services they provided, day shelter and night shelter, greatly appreciated. I finally kind of got off my butt and received housing December 8th, got into transitional housing. It's a sober living recovery center for people with addiction. I suffered from alcoholism. I'm now 9 months sober. I acquired gainful employment January 12th, 2018. Recently was promoted to a plant supervisor in a meat packaging distribution processing center here in Clackamas, a big one. So doing really well. I can't say that I could say the same thing if I didn't receive a lot of the services I got from the Father's Heart. Warming shelters are awesome. I can honestly say that the demand and the need far outweighs the supply and availability of the shelters here. So anything that you could do to pass and ease the restrictions and requirements of them opening these shelters would be greatly appreciated. Homeless is not easy, especially in the winter. Summertime, you can go to the river, you can find shade, it's easy to cool off. There aren't a lot of outdoor warming facilities in the Oregon City area. You can't get warm. Having these centers, especially at night, huge. That's about all I have to say. So anything that you could do to help them out, greatly appreciated.
Well, it's not just one place.
No,
This
not
code,
at all.
This code applies to the entire city.
100%.
So we have to think about the entire community, which is what we're trying to do.
Sure.
I
Thank you so
Appreciate your
much.
time. Thank you.
And congratulations on your success.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, air conditioning center.
Anything else from anybody before we close and make a motion to continue? Okay, so I will close this portion of the public hearing, and I'd like to hear a motion.
I move that we continue this to, do I have to say the number?
Yes.
Till September 10th, because I don't have the,
LEG 18-00001.
yeah, what she just said.
I'll second that.
Agenda in front of me.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we continue file number LEG 18-00001 to a date certain at this time, September the 10th,
With the record open.
with the record still open. Is there
Oh, you
any
asked.
discussion before we
I-
get to the vote? Okay, hearing none.
Commissioner Dow?
How come you always start with me? Aye.
They saved the first for best.
First.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Chair McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
We're continuing to September 12th with the record open.
Okay. Before we leave this lovely topic,
Shall we approve some minutes?
you don't, hang on. So before we leave this lovely topic, we still have some discussion regarding, I have on my list, this is not inclusive of everybody else's, food trucks, food carts, further discussion about transitional housing. My other question has to do with, we've only, Goal 5 has a number of resources that are attributed to it. Why do we not have findings regarding all of the Goal 5 resources? And it seems to me they are in some way applicable. That's for further discussion. We had,
You mean specifically with respect to historic and cultural, or?
all of them, and then I was kind of
Okay.
curious as to, on the comprehensive plan goals, you didn't mention anything. You said parks and, or whichever the goal was, I can't remember right now, was not applicable.
Goal 8?
Goal 8 seems to me that
Okay.
kind of is applicable.
Okay.
We're talking about increasing housing, and then you've got to have places for people to have some
Okay, yeah.
open space. We still are talking about parking. We didn't make any decision about the height. I hope everybody had a chance to just go over there to the property over off of 11th. Just take a look at it. You've got the train, you've got the cliff, so there's some topographic issues that we're dealing with there. Oh, let's see, what else did we have here? We had some people come in before. Adam had a couple of things that I think you added to the list, Adam Zagel, when he was here. I think we were also talking, I think you missed that meeting, Tom, where we did have some discussion about trees. Did we resolve the issue with regard to 3 and 4 plexes? Because I still have a big question mark on my notes.
Denise, I know you talked about trees because I've been watching it, but I'm talking about annexations.
Yeah, we weren't specifically talking about that. And then,
Can I go back to that real quick? So do you want us to talk about, like, assume 3 to 4 plex means the process of approval or design standards for 3 to 4 plex?
Or whether or not we think they're part of the toolbox, I think is what her question was.
I think there was some discussion about
Are
3
they-
units versus 4, you guys don't consider, you're now proposing that that's not multiple family. I'm still not convinced that it isn't, but
Can you all hear out there? Okay.
Okay.
just going through all my notes here.
And then, do you want to talk about trees again? And if so, which part of that? I
Well, it's
just
just
want to
trees
make sure
as
that we're
anything.
very clear on.
I
the
think we
direction.
we were talking about specifically dealing with parking strips and making sure we weren't getting into the bigger question about annexation and trees.
Well, I did in my meeting with Pete, but we'll deal with that.
But we didn't.
It was on just,
we
beyond
dealt
just
with it in
trees,
that
any
meeting.
change to property being brought into.
Well, that was
Right.
not part of that discussion. That
Right,
but it should be.
I understand that, but
I can't vote yes unless I know something about it.
And then the other thing is, we would encourage the planning commission to, if you have policy advice that you would like to forward to the city commission, us, at our last couple of work sessions, the idea of SDCs and other tools have been brought up, that the planning commission could write a letter and include that with the recommendation. This is just code oriented. If you have other stuff that you would like to suggest, it's a good time to write that as well.
Like the question of planter strips. But
Yeah,
like the
planter
question of planter
strips,
strips, that's a policy decision more than it's a code decision. And so if the city likes them, or if they don't, or if they want to have an experiment in a subdivision or not, that's more bigger picture than we have them, and those places that have them need to comply with these standards.
well, I think it's more than that. We have become a tree city USA, and there are certain things that didn't say planter strips per se, but that is one way that we have been able to get additional trees in our community to try to comply, to try to still meet that.
Could have surprised me that we were a tree city. We seem to be cutting them down.
I think
Nope, those are not in the city.
the issue that I was concerned about
Before they
was,
come in the city.
So shall I write trees on my list of stuff, and what part of trees do you want us to
well,
discuss?
my issue had to do with the fact that there's little consequence when somebody cuts one down. And
There was a discussion about making the fee in lieu 1.5
Right.
times.
yes, and did we, yeah, that was the change we
That's
had,
not in the code, because it's on our fee sheet.
right? Well, we wanted to make that recommendation, make it 150%.
You can bump the fee up
Yeah.
to be 150%
Yeah,
of the estimate.
that's what we were suggesting, it be that, because we want to create an incentive to plant trees, but we want to create a disincentive for somebody to just go down and be whacking chopping.
So if you have fees, are you gonna allow the city commission to cut them in half or cut down those fees at will?
Well, the proposal was to make it consistent with the Public Works
Fee.
concept.
150%.
And so that would be, it'd be 150% of whatever the actual cost is. So the fee isn't something that's set, it's something the market.
So that past one was a penalty, not a fee.
Right.
Yeah.
And we cut that off, so, okay.
And then the other thing that I had on the list that Chairman Griffith mentioned was a cumulative capacity for Tri-City. And some concern about the capacity for Tri-City.
Well, Tri-City and South Fork, since we're not the only, if we own South Fork Water Board, South Fork ourselves, but we also have West Lynn, who's gonna have to comply with some of the same stuff, so where's the balancing?
Yeah.
And then Tri-Cities, obviously, there are more than just Oregon City who are utilizing the plant, I'm assuming.
Well, and in fact, Tri-Cities doesn't exist anymore. It's all west. It's one unit.
Well, whatever.
They finally did away with the fiction.
Oh, okay.
And it's all one North
Okay, so
Clackamas
west-
County unit.
Right, so all the there's obviously more than Oregon City that utilizes that facility, which is my knowledge.
So if it's okay with the commission, I'm just gonna go over the unsettled items one more time, just to make sure that we're still clear on our directive. It's to look at parking, and on parking, it sounds like
Off-street parking.
off-street parking, we're talking more about those new housing opportunities and the parking associated with those. And then also the shelter locations, if they're permitted, conditional, prohibited, how that works.
I think our recommendation was that they be conditional.
You wanted to talk about it more, and so we didn't change the recommendation because we didn't have clear direction on if it was. It sounded like the commission as a whole was going more towards conditional, but you wanted to come back to it, so we didn't make any change if we were gonna come back to things.
I think what would be useful is come back to it and list, just like a quickie little sheet that says, this is where they're allowed, conditional or non-conditional or permitted, because we've got like 8 zones we're talking about, and
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yes.
especially because some of them are permitted under this, and so just to say,
Yeah.
yes, that way it's clear.
And then food carts,
And food trucks.
we sorted out the definition concern that we had heard. So mobile food vendor, whatever we're calling it.
I can't hear Laura, sorry.
I'll talk louder. And so the proposal before the commission was to add that temporary, 5-hour thing in the mixed-use employment, campus industrial, and general industrial, the 3 mostly employment-based zoning designations. And so we'll come back to that as well, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Does mixed-use employment mean downtown type of employment?
It does not. It's on the hilltop, so you'll see mixed-use employment near the hospital,
Okay,
including the
and
hospital,
Red
and then also on Red Soils, think of
I wouldn't like to see any food trucks up
Stitch and
there.
Embroidery, Buell's
Drive up
up there.
Benchmade.
They could drive up to your house.
And then we'll come back to building heights in mixed-use downtown, specifically the 45-foot heights if you're within 100 feet of an existing residential use, and then also for that block from 11 to 16. Okay, and then, sorry, almost done with the list.
No, that's fine.
3 to 4-plex, it sounds like we want to talk about if they should be treated different than multifamily broadly. And then the capacity thing that for West and South Fork.
Yep.
So speaking of 3.5, I'm still a little fuzzy on why we're not adding a little caveat specifically regarding manufactured housing developments and why they don't have their own, why they're being completely dumped into 3.5.
Peter, Elizabeth?
Go ahead.
Because where the existing manufactured home parks are located in the city are already zoned R3.5, and so that's why we've proposed to allow those as permitted uses in that zone.
There's a lot of other things that are also zone 3.5 that don't apply to manufactured dwelling
Can you
subdivisions.
There are many other permitted uses. Yeah.
Right, and I think that, maybe as we start talking about future steps, there has been some discussion about creating a new residential manufactured home park zone. However, the scope of this project was specifically limited to exclude any map changes at this time. So depending on how you'd like to shape your recommendation, that could be a long-term recommendation, but we wanted to be able to address that issue with this set of recommendations. And if that winds up being an interim recommendation to keep them in R3.5 with a long-term solution in mind as well, then that would be an acceptable option it's not up to me to say what's acceptable. That would be an option that would be within the range of your abilities to recommend.
If either of you have other items to add to that list, just let them know. And then if we get some additional items to the list that come in after this meeting, but before the next meeting, could you just send us all a little email with what the laundry list is so we can be prepared? That goes for you, Vern, as well. If you have anything you want to add, you also wanted to talk about lot averaging again.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Vern.
No, I'm pointing at you, but I was also speaking to Vern.
want me to add that to the list?
I would.
We call it lot reduction.
Lot read, whatever.
So we want to be very transparent. Okay.
I'm on that case.
And then also, is there any more questions for our transportation consultant, John Riplinger? All right, so given the scope that none of this includes transportation-related items.
Oh, I'm still curious about the number of housing units. You did read it off, but.
I have a note to include the statistics for you in your packet.
So that was on.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
Have we resolved the issue of annexation with about half a dozen different zones coming into the city with a subdivision? Or should that be included in this?
Current proposal is to keep the default zoning to be, when you annex in, you will get the lowest density default zone.
Right.
But we have not yet adopted the mobility standards issue is still working its way through the state. So,
But what I'm asking is that an issue that should be addressed at this ordinance?
If you think it is, then.
Oh, I do, because we've been frustrated with that.
Yes.
It's driven us crazy. We haven't, processes everything, perceptions everything, and it was just a confusing mess.
One thing that we did do in this round of code changes, so it'll be bright red in your packet, is we put in a line amendment that if you're going to have either phased development or more than 200 residential units, that you go through the master plan process. And so that will rethink more concept plan. And so when
Why
those kinds of.
200?
That's huge.
Yeah, I think it should be less than that.
Airport's only 99.
That's-
Well, we're still getting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, it's 200 units. That's too many.
It's like 20 acres, we estimated, if it was an R10.
Yeah.
If it were, a different zone or
I think
less
100.
acreage.
They should have to go through, I mean,
So, yeah,
100 units is a lot of units.
Yeah, it is. And
Here, if
we
you-
weren't totally settled on that,
I don't give a rip about how many units this is.
Well, I think
What I care about is, should it come into the city or not? Should we address it as an annexation without getting 4 or 5 other issues involved? Does it belong in the city or not? Is this the time to annex it or not? And just address that issue. Keep it simple.
Then deal with subdivisions and all
Yeah,
that.
you're talking
Now,
about
I mean,
timing.
what is so difficult about that?
Well, you're talking about the issue of combining applications. I believe you and I had a discussion about trying to split that apart so that the other stuff doesn't get in the way
Yeah.
of,
That's what I'm saying.
yes, that's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, and what's so hard about that?
Pete, did you just say to Bob that they brought in at the lowest zone?
9 PM, we gotta flip the disc again.
we can add this, if
We'll
you
be
want
done by
to,
then.
if you want to adjourn, we can add this to the list and come back
Yeah,
next
that's right.
Yeah, take a look at those
Right, we got
amendments.
3 minutes. Do we want to bust through the minutes and adjourn?
Oh, I still wonder what Pete said for that. You said they're brought in at the lowest zone? Does that mean
Current code
3.5?
says
I'm
that
looking
you're
at
annexed
here.
in
There
at
are
the
no minutes
lowest
attached to this.
Agenda.
density zone.
Lowest means 10 instead of
10,
3.5.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
That's only the stuff for 3.
And you keep it there until the zone change application is made.
No, you need to go down to agenda. Gotta close that box.
I did close it.
Right, and then go to agenda.
Okay, Zach, you wanted to, do we have anything else? And again, gentlemen, Bob has something. Vern, if you have anything, please make sure that staff gets that. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it now, we would like to add it to our list and make sure that all the commissioners know what's on that list, so when we get in on the next meeting, we have a plan. I'm sure Paul, if you're watching at home or at work, when you get this, he might have some things to add to the list, so we'll make sure we get in touch with Paul about that. All right, shall we start with the low-hanging fruit of the draft minutes of February 12th?
Okay, I have a question about them.
You have a question about the minutes of
Yep,
February 12th?
I've never had a question before about minutes.
Okay.
Or
what is your-
change.
Is it about these specific minutes or
Yes.
minutes in general?
These
Okay.
Specific.
So is
I
everybody?
noticed as I read through here, every single person says that they're a resident of and what they're discussing. The only one, with all due respect, is Captain Steve Ford, resident of Oregon City, had several degrees and had built and sailed many ships. What does that have to do with his testimony? Because no one else has a description of who they are or what they've done. He's the only one. Out of due respect to the guy.
Which page are you on?
On page 4.
I know, I saw
But I
that.
saw resident of Oregon City, all these other people, what they're asking or saying, but he's the only one that, all of a sudden, he's sailed all these ships and he's built this, and I thought, what does that have to do with the discussion at hand?
We can remove that from the minutes.
All due respect to the
If
guy.
you wish, yeah. I think transcriptionists got very interested all of a sudden.
Well, it was a fascinating topic.
Where's the Tom guy who's a real jerk?
Okay.
Anything else on the
No, that's
February?
it. We had
February
a
2nd.
nuclear sub-commander captain appear before us on our public comments one night, a couple of years ago.
Wow.
And
did?
eventually he got around to saying what he was here for.
Move approval of 2/12/18 minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Take the vote, Pete?
Okay, Commissioner Maybe?
Abstain.
Okay.
You
Commissioner
were not
Henkin?
here?
Aye.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Chairman Griff?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
I didn't have to go first. Yes, aye.
February 12th minutes are passed.
No, we got one more.
One more.
Sorry,
Vern.
Oh, sorry, Vern. Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
I've got an old list here.
Gotta speak up there, Vern. Call Vern
throw
first
things
next
at him.
time.
Was Vern here?
Got a rubber band there, Vern?
Move approval of the 4/9, 5/14, and 6/11 minutes.
Oh, I was putting out, I was gonna abstain on one of them.
Oh, okay. Move approval of
Why are you
4-9
abstaining
minutes.
on all of them?
Oh, one of them.
Oh, okay, we need to call it out.
Yep, I did.
Okay,
Second.
4-9,
Yep.
okay.
Hey, Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
She skipped Johnson again.
Go with Johnson, go with Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
Aye.
Sorry, Commissioner Henkin?
Abstain.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Okay, for the next one, I'm gonna start with Bob, and we're just gonna go down, you don't even have to say the names.
I'd like to motion.
Yeah, no, you move, not I like to motion,
yeah,
you move.
I'd like to move, we approve minutes from May 14, 2018.
I'll second. On the vote, Mr. Mahoney,
Aye.
we're just
Yes.
going down the line. Aye.
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 Not happy with them, but aye.
Great.
Okay. All right, the minutes of June 11th, 2018.
I don't think I was here then.
That was the
You were absent.
Yeah, I was ill.
meeting that we had the Beaver Creek concept plan revisiting, if you recall. We also had Park Place annexation, findings of fact, inclusions of law, and more minutes. So I'll move to approve.
Second.
Aye.
You say I wasn't there then?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Okay.
Look at that.
All right. Communications.
None.
Okay,
Crack that
is
gavel.
there a motion?
Move, we adjourn.
Second.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Okay. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.